Good morning from WKYT News. We welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Later, Kentucky Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Ashli talks about the economy and the Chamber's priorities for the upcoming legislative session. But first, State Senator Greg Elkins is here. The Republican businessman is from Winchester. He represents Clark, Bath, Menifee, and Montgomery counties in Frankfort. Senator Elkins has recently been involved in the Meals for Seniors program, which had run out of money before Governor Beshear shifted about $9 million over to cover the program until the end of this fiscal year. We'll also ask Senator Elkins about his priorities for the session ahead and a recent discussion about teachers' pay here in the Commonwealth. Senator Elkins, welcome. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. It's good to be here.
The senior meals program has really gotten a lot of attention the last few weeks. It is funded partly by the state budget, which has a shortfall, and partly by COVID-era funds, which have run out. How important is this program for some Kentucky seniors?
Very important for Kentucky seniors. They're very concerned when it looked like the monies were going to run out. They were very concerned. They started reaching out to my office almost immediately, and I could hear the concern in their voices. And I had mayors and judge executives also that would send me the letter that was issued on September the 8th by Commissioner Eldridge, and it stated that the funds were out or extinguished, and we're going to have to end the program. And so I started really paying attention to it at that point.
Typically, how does this program work?
So the program typically works with funds are distributed by the General Assembly to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and then it's down to the Department for Aging and Independent Living, and then distributed down to our local ad districts. And those ad districts prepare the meals or oversee the preparation of these meals and the distribution of the meals.
Some have noted that this senior meals program may be the only contact some people have with the outside world.
It is, Bill. It's not only is it just to help feed our seniors, some of our most vulnerable populations from time to time, but it's an opportunity for them to socialize, to come to senior centers, have a hot meal, sit down and talk to other people, and a lot of times that is their only contact with other people.
You and some others at one point had called for a special session of the General Assembly, even though we're weeks away from the regular session. You said it was that urgent of a need. Do you believe that the governor's action, shifting some money over, is adequate to keep the program going for now?
We did, Bill. We did think that it was important enough for a special session if that's what it took to get the work done. As I said, September the 8th, I started following the program, and as you know, I chaired the Legislative Oversight and Investigation Committee. So I was following this program and the funding issue that was going on, and sometime around the 1st of October, I hadn't heard a solution yet, and I started to get pretty concerned that we're now going into the second month without funds. And so I asked the Commissioner Eldridge and others to come before the Legislative Oversight Committee and testify about their solution. And I expected when they got there we would hear a solution to the problem. As testimony began and as it went on, I started to realize that there was no solution, and not only was there not a solution, it didn't appear anybody was working on a plan. There was no sense of urgency whatsoever. We were 32 days, I think, into this crisis, if you will, and there was just nothing that had been done. No communication with the governor's office, really, to speak of, or that anybody could speak of. So I implored at that time the governor and his staff to find those funds necessary to make this program continue, and thankfully he did. And
so shifted about $9 million around. Do you have a proposal for the legislature to fund this on a more permanent basis, and especially given that in this budget session that's coming up, there is going to be competition for every dollar?
There are. Maybe this may be one of the most difficult budget sessions that we've seen in competition for dollars. I expect that as long as our ad districts communicate and our governor's office listens to the ad districts with the funds that they're requesting, and they're honest about what they need, I think the legislature will fund it 100%. We did the last time. They asked for $10 million per year, and we gave them $10 million per year. Just turns out $10 million wasn't enough.
who is eligible for this program?
Currently, anyone over 60 years of age is eligible for the program, regardless of assets or income level. If you're 60 years or older, you're eligible for the program.
So at this point, you believe the crisis of this situation, at least, is past?
I do. The $9 million that the governor's office found will fund at least 90% of these programs throughout. The ag districts will probably get a little more frugal, and now they really will tighten their belts just a bit. And they may need some help from local governments as well and food pantries, but I think the crisis is averted now. Better communication next budget session, I think, will be helpful, and I think we will not go through this again. So.
All right. Well, Senator, at this point, we have this federal government shutdown that is continuing. There's so much uncertainty out there. The people really feel caught in the middle. I know you serve in Frankfort and not in Washington, but as you observe that,
I've followed that closely.
What do you see?
Yeah, I've followed that closely. It is very concerning to me, especially this cliff, November the 1st cliff for our SNAP benefits, our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's going to end November the 1st, and so I'm very concerned about that and how that's going to go. I think that the government shutdown is of our own making. I think we could fix it. We're just going to have to work together. I saw Senator McConnell urging cooperation and not necessarily capitulation, but cooperation. And so I also heard Congressman Comer on television yesterday saying, we're ready to negotiate. We just have to get the government back working again.
Well, you're in this, in politics now, we'll say, and so you know how you work things out. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine the frustration that people have out here and just watching because both sides are so dug in and nobody blinks and the people are the ones paying the cost?
It's absolutely correct. The people are the ones that are paying the price for this shutdown. And the price is going to get heavier as we go, as these federal funds. You know, previously, President Trump's administration was able to move funds around to at least continue paying our military and some others. But that's becoming more and more difficult. It's harder and harder to find a few $1 billion, if you will, just laying around to fund some of these programs. And I think the SNAP program itself is a $8 billion program per month, $8 billion per month. And it's over $100 million here in Kentucky for the month of November. So that money just isn't laying around anywhere to find, like maybe $9 million was for the Senior Meals program. So it's difficult. It's frustrating for us as well. I think that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats could vote to open the government, and let's get back to negotiating. Let's get back to work. It's time to get back to work.
Other priorities that you are hearing or that you have ahead of the 2026 session, some indicate that child care is going to be a major discussion. I think the Chamber of Commerce will talk some about that. Is there a price tag for that makes sense to you?
The government, I'm a little conflicted with that, and the government getting too involved in child care issues, but I do understand that affects the workforce. So yeah, there is a level at which I would be okay with, and I could see us getting to help continue funding child care. We certainly did it through the COVID era, and those funds have now expired. So child care is it's a real concern, and it certainly does affect our workforce. I actually attended a meeting in Montgomery County the other day where some preschools were closing, and that's going to affect about 150 families that are working families that may not be able to go to work now because they have to stay home and provide their own child care.
Other priorities you have for the session? I'm
a local control guy. I prioritize giving control back to the local government. I was a magistrate, as you know, myself in Clark County, and so I believe that the decisions that the magistrates and the judge executives and the mayors make are typically better than the ones we make in Frankfort. The ones we make in Frankfort are typically better than the ones that they make in Washington, D.C. One of the bills that I'll be sponsoring this year's local control bill, it allows our water districts to eliminate putting fluoride in the water. It makes that an option for them rather than an unfunded mandate as it is now.
You do support that?
I do support that, yes.
You and I recently attended a legislative breakfast before an education group. I was MC there, and you were one of the panelists. The education commissioner pressed the importance of teachers' pay in recruiting and retaining teachers. The legislature has been reluctant to mandate raises. they do send extra money to the districts, and then the districts will say that they have other needs, and that money doesn't always go to raises. You at that meeting called that a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle, Bill. Some of our districts do exactly what we ask them to do with those funds, and they'll provide almost 100% of them towards teachers' wages. But you're right, some of them do use it on other priorities, if you will. Again, getting back to the local control, I'm the kind of person, I think we probably should just give the school boards the money. The school boards should be held accountable by the voters, but it shouldn't be up to us to mandate how they spend those monies.
Anything else you'll see on the way for that 2026 session, now weeks away?
I think we'll be looking at the income tax reduction again, and just to see if that can be done. We didn't make the triggers. Some of the purists are going to say we didn't hit the triggers, we don't reduce it any at all. Some of the folks are going to say maybe we were close enough, we should reduce it some. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Public education is always interesting.
How do you feel about that income tax issue, given that we ended up with a shortfall in this session?
I'm for getting it as close to zero as fast as we can get it there. I don't want to go too fast. I think doing it responsibly the way that we've done it in years past is exactly how we should do it. I think if we do that, growth will continue to happen in Kentucky. We'll continue to see economic growth and be able to continue towards the path to zero. That's where I'd like to be.
Senator Greg Elkins, we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Bill.
Very much. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with Ashli Watts from the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce as Kentucky Newsmakers continues. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. The 2026 legislative session is quickly approaching, and as usual, the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce is keeping a close watch on what it hopes happens and what it hopes doesn't. Child care has emerged as an issue for both the business community and many family advocates who say more parents could work if they had more options. It will be a budget year, and there's likely to be a lot of discussion about how Kentucky will invest its tax dollars. The economy is a little hard to describe right now. Many businesses are prospering, but some are concerned about the uncertainty of tariffs and AI and other things. Joining us today is Ashli Watts, the president and CEO of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, the first woman to ever hold that position. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. Good to see you as always.
Thanks so much for having me.
So here we are at a time of uncertainty, really. First of all, and we'll just broadly say, how do you assess the Kentucky economy right now with a lot of positive indicators out there, but also a lot of caution flags out there?
I think uncertainty is the key word. So businesses are still really optimistic, but there is uncertainty around our economy. When you look at the tariff situation, we're still in week 4 of a government shutdown. There's quite a bit of uncertainty going on. But here in Kentucky, signs are still showing that our economy is really strong. We've had jobs added. The tricky part is right now is that without true jobs numbers, because the government is shut down, we don't really know how things are going. But our unemployment insurance trust fund is still strong, and so investment is still up. So right now in Kentucky, things are going pretty well, but nationally, when you look at the economy, there's quite a bit of uncertainty. And we actually just conducted a poll of many businesses across Kentucky, and there is still that hesitancy and uncertainty that we didn't see, 10 months ago at the beginning of the year, that people are now starting to feel because of all the changing directions of policy.
What does hesitancy bring when business owners or business leaders get that kind of information or have that kind of feeling?
I think hesitancy brings stifling growth. I think when you're hesitant about something, or you're uncertain, or if you're a Kentucky manufacturer or you work in the bourbon industry or in the agriculture industry and you see what's happening with tariffs, that's obviously going to cause you to pause and think, should I expand my business? Should I hire more people? Should I invest in this new product line? So I think the term hesitancy is just a really good one that, right now things are still going strong in Kentucky, but there is that little bit of pause for businesses to really be able to grow and expand.
The uncertainty of the government shutdown can't be of any comfort to businesses trying to plan for the holiday season and beyond. As we were taping this on Friday, there have been some court rulings and questions about what's actually going to happen with SNAP benefits. But in any case, again, people are on edge out there. It
is, and I don't think that we can understate how dire this situation is. I think when we as Kentuckians look at Washington, D.C., sometimes you see this political divide, but this political divide is now leading to real life consequences here in the Commonwealth with all of our Kentucky families. We have people who have not been paid for weeks that are working every single day to keep us safe, air traffic controllers, people that are working in government programs that have not been paid in weeks. We also know that as of tomorrow, SNAP benefits most likely will be cut off for 600,000 Kentuckians. So these are real life consequences, and there are big policy discussions at play. There are political divides at play and philosophical opinions on some of these big picture issues, but what this is leading to is real life consequences for Kentucky families, and we just really encourage Congress to do their job and make sure that the government stays open, that these essential operations can be met.
Okay, and we will underscore again that this is streaming Friday evening. There's some court rulings in question, and then we're airing on Sunday, and so we'll see. The whole SNAP benefits issue is very fluid.
A lot can change, but we do know we're about less than 12 hours away from SNAP benefits being cut off for 600,000 Kentucky families.
Yeah, if that held. All right. How concerned are you about tariffs? We know that both of Kentucky's United States senators have taken votes that to try to block the president from being able to do the tariffs on his own.
Yeah, we're really proud that both of our senators have been very outspoken about the negative impacts that tariffs have on our economy here in Kentucky, as well as the governor. Here in Kentucky, we have seen studies for many months that show the impacts of tariffs will most negatively impact Kentucky more than any other state. So when you think about our major industries of manufacturing, of agriculture, of course, of bourbon, those things are all impacted by this tariff situation. We know that there's been trade talks going on, and we're really happy about that. I've seen news this week that there may be some deals with China. So obviously those are good positive things, but we know that tariffs really don't work for Kentucky's economy. I always like to say no one wants the United States to be taken advantage of in trade negotiations. We want things to be fair. We also want more onshoring. We want more businesses to come to the United States, and specifically here in Kentucky, and make sure that we can fill those jobs with Kentucky families. But we also know that these things do not work in a vacuum with trade, and that we are a global economy, and 500,000 jobs in Kentucky are reliant on trade. And so some of our key industries like agriculture, manufacturing, bourbon have been negatively impacted. And so we are for fair trade negotiations. We are for more onshoring, but historically tariffs have never worked positively for the U.S. economy.
What businesses are hurt the worst in Kentucky?
I think right now you're really seeing farmers being hit pretty hard. They have to plan quite a bit ahead when they're planting their crops. And so we've been hearing from soybean farmers saying that this is really catastrophic for their industry. Also smaller manufacturers. Larger manufacturers can kind of plan ahead. They can maybe absorb some of the cost. Some of our smaller manufacturers that are great employers here in Kentucky are really being felt by these impacts of not being able to get some of their supplies, or the cost of their goods just skyrocketing. So manufacturing, I think, and agriculture are two of the main ones that are being hit hard. And then we can't go without talking about bourbon. We know that bourbon has been taken off the shelves in Canada because of this trade dispute. So bourbon as our signature industry, we're unabashed supporters of our signature industries. And I think I include agriculture and bourbon in both of those. And so we know that trade does not work for those industries, or that tariffs do not work for those industries.
You mentioned Kentucky businesses trying to fill these vacant jobs, and there are lots of them. There is another challenge, and the Chamber has identified, or at least underlined that. Kentucky's population only grew at half the rate of the U.S. In the most recent census. Do you see Kentucky with a need to, and any strategy for improving that situation?
I think absolutely. I mean, I'm a lifelong Kentuckian, and I know that it's the best place to live, to work, to do business, to raise a family, and we need to make sure that we are growing our population here. And so the last census showed some good news, bad news. The good news is that our population did grow. Some other states like West Virginia and others, their population actually declined. Ours did grow, but it only grew at half the rate of the national average, like you said. And so this is really an all hands on deck approach, which is why the Chamber is really laser focused on workforce initiatives. And much of what we do is related back to workforce. And so we know that we need more people here in Kentucky to fill these jobs. And also it increases our tax base so we can have better, be able to better fund schools and public safety and infrastructure and all the things that make our community so great. But we have some pretty big challenges ahead of us in terms of workforce and in terms terms of attracting that population. Housing is one. We don't have enough housing, really, even to meet the current demands of our population, much less if we added more. Childcare is another too. And so it's really a multifaceted approach on how we're going to be able to grow our population here in Kentucky. But we believe that that strong growth is essential for our economy.
Well, that tees up the legislative session nicely. They have a lot of issues to contend with when they come to Frankfurt in just a few weeks. And of course, the budget is the major thing they hope to accomplish in that time, the 2-year budget. The Chamber has identified child care as a major issue. How much is that holding the workforce back?
We think it's quite a bit. You know, child care is something I say 10 years ago, if we were sitting in here, these chairs talking about the upcoming legislative session, child care would not have been a topic for the Chamber of Commerce. What we have realized in the last couple of years is that it really is a workforce issue. Not only is it good for the child and for the parents, but it really is holding back, we think, a substantial number of people that could go into the workforce that want to, and they just can't. We think that number could be anywhere as high as about 28,000 Kentuckians, that if they were able to access affordable, quality child care in their area and in their region, they could enter the workforce. So we really do feel like it's an essential piece of that puzzle when we're talking about people that could work and that want to work, removing that barrier.
And how to approach it is obviously the question. Governor Beshear says part of the solution is universal pre-K. It comes with a hefty price tag. Many Republicans have been reluctant to at least fully embrace it, but does the Chamber have a stance on universal pre-K? Yeah,
so for the last 2 years, actually, the Chamber has convened a group, the Kentucky Child Care Collaborative, of about 30 different groups that have, really focused on child care. They're from different sides of the aisle, different areas, different interests, and we've pulled together this group over the last 2 years that have come out with about 30 recommendations on how to tackle child care from a programmatic and from a policy perspective. We've done a lot of work in the policy area with child care the last couple of years, but there is still more work to be done. So I think you talk about, pre-K for all and that initiative, that can definitely be part of the conversation, but we're really looking at it from birth on. It's not just 3 and 4-year-olds that families need to meet those needs. It's really from birth on. And so I'm excited that there has kind of been more attention drawn to this issue over the last couple of months, and we're hoping to see something move through the legislature this next session.
After school programs as well, right?
All, yes. Yeah, and even making it easier so that businesses could operate child care centers if they want to. We know we have several success stories here in Kentucky with Toyota, and there's some hospitals that do it, but how can we make it easier if businesses want to provide this service for their employees to be able to do so? So it's kind of a multifaceted approach. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all approach.
But you think it will be a major discussion in the session?
Yes, I think child care in general will be a major focal point of the session.
Senator Elkins, who was with us just a little bit ago, hinted that there's a possibility that the legislature will reduce the income tax again, even though the trigger was not hit. Where would the Chamber be on that?
Well, that's a tricky one that we've been hearing a lot of conversation about, because we barely missed that trigger. And that trigger that was laid out in House Bill 8 from several years ago is really important to make sure that, we can responsibly lower that income tax and not kind of offset our budget and take away money from essential services. The fact of the matter is we think we barely missed that trigger because of some disaster relief funding, and so it was kind of an anomaly that this happened. And so I think we'll have to see how those conversations go. What is the will of the legislature? Our goal, though, from the Chamber is to get to a 0% income tax. We know that may not happen over the next year, 2 years, but we are on that path to do so. And so I think we'll definitely be part of that conversation with legislative leaders and policymakers to make sure that we do it in a responsible way. But if we can do it in a responsible way, we always want to be continuing to lower that income tax, because even though we've lowered ours from 6% to 3.5% in the last couple of years, many other states have too. And when you talk about tax reform and individual income taxes, it really is a race to the bottom. So we really want to try to get responsibly to 0%.
What are other priorities for the Kentucky Chamber for the Kentucky legislature in just a few weeks?
Yeah, we'll be working on housing as well. So child care and housing will really be two of our top issues, really kind of nonpartisan, bipartisan issues. But we know that housing is a major workforce issue here in Kentucky. We are about 2 200,000 units short of the housing needs that we currently have. And so we've been working with the Home Builders Association, the Realtors, the Kentucky League of Cities, on kind of the Bankers Association, on a package that hopefully will gain some legislative support this next session to kind of, reduce red tape, invest in some infrastructure, and really make sure that working Kentucky families can have access to housing.
Sometimes it is zoning.
Planning and zoning, yes.
There are questions about manufactured housing in some cities. So again, a lot to discuss there. Do you agree that tourism is a major part of Kentucky's economy with some blue sky potential?
I think so. I live in downtown Frankfort, and every single weekend I see Frankfort packed with visitors, most of which that have gone to Buffalo Trace or on the Bourbon Trail. And so I see firsthand what tourism brings to Kentucky. Anytime I travel around, the United States, people say, oh, they named their favorite distillery, or they say, I've never been to the Derby and I really want to, or I want to go, climbing at the Natural Bridge and Red River Gorge. And so I think tourism is a really important part of Kentucky's economy. And from the Chamber's perspective, we're always supportive of any kind of furthered initiatives around tourism.
The Kentucky Chamber puts together a lot of interesting programs for its members, and you have one coming up in a couple of weeks you were telling me about. A couple of former governors will speak on an important topic. Yeah,
so our legislative preview that we have every year is next Monday, November 10th, at the Central Bank Center. And we do this every year. We usually have about 50 legislators or so really talking about the key issues that will be addressed during the General Assembly. And we were trying to think of a really fun, lunchtime program that would kind of spur some interest. And in this time of kind of political divide and political divisiveness, we thought how nice would it be to have two former governors from opposite sides of the aisle come and talk about civility. And so we have Governor Ernie Fletcher and Governor Steve Beshear coming to our lunchtime session to kind of talk about the state of politics, how they got along. They were once political rivals and opponents. And so I think it'll be a really great discussion in this kind of moment that we all need a little civility right now.
Agree to that. Thank you so much for coming by. Ashli Watts with the Kentucky Chamber. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll be back. We'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers in just a moment. We appreciate you being with us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. We remind you that for all the latest Kentucky political happenings and the latest news, to join us on air on WKYT, the CW Lexington, and on WKYT.com and our WKYT News app. We hope you make it a good week ahead.